Welcome everyone to the Too Long to Listen podcast. This is, by the way, episode number 48. So I'm getting closer to 50 and you're helping me get there. So thank you, Jake. And today is a special recording day. We're in a podcast studio. It's Jake's first time in a podcast studio. So I'm happy he's with me. And yeah, welcome. And how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I feel special to be here in one of the early days in the podcast studio, but also a little bit offended that I'm not number 50 for the.
Did you want to be number 50? We can fake this,
for the milestone.
Okay.
That would have been a cool release, but yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for joining me because, as you know, I actually met you at a virtual conference. I mean, not conference, but it was product marketing kind of debate, and you were talking about your experience in marketing. And then I went on your LinkedIn profile and I saw that you didn't even study marketing, and I was very curious to learn more about your story and your experience. So why don't we start with an introduction? You know, it can be formal, it doesn't have to be formal.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that was a product-led growth fireside chat.
Correct.
And yeah, that was super. That was probably the first time I've done something like marginally podcasty.
You were getting ready.
I think that was a good pinnacle of my career, of being like, oh my God, maybe I'm a good enough product manager that people actually care about my opinion, not in my company. But yeah, to introduce myself, I'm Jake and I'm 29, so not quite 30 yet. And I'm the founder of a marketing analytics consultancy called Day One Data, where we do data infrastructure, data analytics, marketing mix modeling, anything to do with attribution, really helping companies do more with less to improve their internal efficiencies, basically. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, how far do we go? I was born in North London.
I mean, you shared your age already, so it's kind of like we can go as deep in your career path as you want to. So today you're a founder, and do you want to tell us more about, before getting into the founding journey, what did you do? Like, where did you start?
Yeah, I think one thing to caveat is that Day One Data is very early, so it's only a month and a half old. Mm-hmm. But obviously there was foundations which sort of like kicked off as a prelude to that beforehand. Okay. But regardless, I think my journey to becoming a founder is probably quite stereotypical of a lot of founders. But regardless, I went to University of Bristol studying politics and international relations. And naturally, I have a data consultancy now.
Classic.
But I was definitely one of those people at university whereby I had no clue what I wanted to do afterwards. You know, literally no clue. Mm-hmm. As in, I was like, I could do a bit of marketing. I could do some stuff in like commercial finance. I was also thinking around property. So it's a really broad spectrum of like different domains and disciplines. But I remember really clearly in my last year of university, which is basically, you know, the point of time where you stop partying and you start realizing like, right, I need to like do some work. That
we all know that.
Yeah, it was time to sort of like get the head down. And I remember some of the people around me were starting to get on like graduate programs, mm-hmm. and a few of the dominoes started falling. And I was like, right, I need to get my act together here. And so I applied to a few. So I got onboarded and I got like approvals from Vodafone and from Tesco. So both of these were in the like marketing domain. Okay. I don't know, did you ever have to do an assessment center?
So I was going to ask, like, is the only reason why you get into this because people around you were doing it? Like, it was peer pressure, or it was something you actually wanted to do?
It was probably peer pressure in the truest sense. Okay. You know the feeling of like, we're about to graduate and what do I do next?
So this is 3 years in.
That was terrifying for me.
Fair enough. This was 3 years in, right?
Yeah.
So you graduated from politics and international relations, and you started applying for grad schemes, or
yeah, exactly.
In consulting, schemes.
Largely in marketing.
Marketing mostly.
Largely in marketing, yeah.
Why marketing? Like, is that a normal pathway for politics and international relations?
I honestly just felt that it would be a fun thing to graduate into.
Okay.
There was no sort of like rhyme or reason. I think I just didn't want to do anything financial.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do anything political. And so marketing felt like the sort of the thing to go into.
Okay. To answer your question, I never went through an assessment, graduate assessment.
Yeah, assessment, they're horrible.
And I assume this was in person, right? Like you had to go to...
They're like a full day.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I heard of them, but I've never
Yeah.
done them.
They were
And I'm
really
in
horrible.
marketing, so...
They were really horrible.
So tell us more. How was that experience for you?
They're really competitive because you turn up on the day with 40 or 50 other candidates.
Similar to you.
Similar to you.
Yeah.
And there's maybe 10 roles available.
Yeah.
And there's a series of like collaborative challenges with a series of judges like watching you. So it's not only about like your output.
So this is not stressful for you then?
This was super stressful for me. I remember one of them, I had to stay in a Holiday Inn in Slough for the night where they put you up. I remember waking up in the morning, like really badly slept and super frustrated, super tired. And you had to go and like consistently be judged throughout the whole next day with like a panel of judges watching you like have lunch, watching you interact with all of the other candidates.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
like
it's super pressure.
TV
pressure
reality like situation.
It's actually not a bad show to...
I wish I was there watching. But so, okay, I have a question about that experience for you in terms of preparing for the assessment and not being 100% sure that marketing was what you wanted to do, like because it wasn't, right? You were still kind of investigating your options.
Yeah, which is actually interesting because after the Tesco graduate like assessment center for marketing, I got a phone call saying, would you consider coming on the online graduate program? Because we think you're a really great candidate and there's not too many people who have actually applied for this. But this was working on sort of the Tesco online proposition. So, you know, when you can get food delivered to your house, basically, like your weekly shop. And that was probably, me saying yes to that was probably like the best decision I ever made. And I probably wouldn't have said yes if I was really clearly defined in terms of what I wanted to do after university.
Interesting. So why exactly did you say yes to that offer?
Clearly I wasn't that into marketing, which is ironic because now I have a marketing analytics consultancy.
Right, we'll get into it. But first, let's focus on Tesco. Like, how was, 3 years in Tesco for you?
2.5 years, yeah.
2.5 years. And what were your responsibilities? Like, how did you grow in the role? Yeah.
So one of the best parts about the graduate program, and I don't know if they still do it like this, but at the time, this was sort of the way it operated. For the first year, you would do like 4 different placements, so 1 per quarter.
Like a rotation, basically.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
And so within my first year, I think I initially trialed a consumer product, which was like changing, features on the application. Then I trialed fulfillment. And then I was quite a unique case whereby I wanted to work in the data team because I saw this as like an opportunity to kind of expand, my understanding and my knowledge, and asked if I could work in the business intelligence team. And for those who don't know, business intelligence is kind of, in really simple terms, connecting data sources together and visualizing that data so that it unlocks use cases for people around the business who are not technical per se or don't have the data available to them. And that's basically where I started learning SQL, which is like a querying language. And that kind of, unlocked the door to more sort of like data focus from my perspective.
Add 1 programming language on your CV and that's it. You've unlocked all of the opportunities.
Yeah.
But okay, so you're saying, I'm heavily summarizing this now, but you're saying that thanks to Tesco, you understood your interest in data analytics and you knew that was the kind of area you wanted to explore a bit more. So moving from marketing to data analytics almost? I mean,
pretty much. I mean, I think to be really good at data, you don't actually need to be like unbelievable at numbers. I think it's kind
so
of
what do you need to be? Tell
it's kind of
us.
a taboo. I think it's more of like a problem solver.
Okay.
So it's not like mental arithmetic, you know, where you need to be like really quick with numbers, etc. Whereas in my case, you know, I didn't really want to do anything like financial or anything to do with like number crunching all day
Or
long.
politics.
Yeah, exactly.
After studying that, but
Or marketing.
okay.
And what was quite unique about my case was that although this was meant to be 4 rotations in 1 year, I ended up staying in the data team for 2 rotations.
Okay.
I think it's because it's a very different skill set, you know, towards like consumer product, because there was quite a large learning curve to understand, you know, a programming language. And when I was doing that, I realized like I really liked the culture around data, because it's very proactive and it's very sort of it's very outcome driven. So when you deliver something that's useful to someone, and that's useful to kind of like a chain reaction of a use case which can be measured then on.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if I totally answer your question, but
To be honest, I don't even remember my question. No, I was asking if, you know, thanks to Tesco, you got into data, or that what unlocked your interest in exploring the world of data a bit further, which
Yeah.
sounds like it's the case. And it's interesting what you said about the impact. So it sounds like you were also seeking for a proof that you were adding value in the company. Because I mean, this is my opinion, but in big corporates, usually it's really hard for someone early in their career to showcase their value and to really see that they're helping, whether it's other teams or customers, and it can be a little frustrating. So is that something you ever felt when you were at Tesco, or because it sounds like you were
Yeah.
just, you know, I know what I want to do now.
It's definitely interesting, because when you join a graduate program, you join with a cohort of other graduates. So there was an online cohort of around like 20 or 30 of us.
Okay.
So I guess, you know, probably subconsciously you are trying to make an impact, and you are trying to do something that's a little bit different to what, you know, the other people are effectively doing.
Yeah.
So knowing myself, potentially moving to something a little bit more data driven and potentially impactful was something which, yeah, was like an unconscious decision at the time.
Okay. And so how did that turn out? Like what happened at Tesco, and what happened after Tesco?
Well, I pivoted again.
God, stop it. Okay.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you're asking these questions, because I never really thought about how many different things I did like before I actually settled in my thing.
You were getting there, you know. So.
Yeah, you're great. You're great at this. But yeah, so once I was doing the BI analytics, which was in the analytics capability team,
Yeah.
I realized what was quite cool was more sort of the strategic use cases of data, and understanding the roadmap and understanding user requirements, as opposed to kind of being the functional person doing the role, which
I
is
see where
where
this is going.
product management came into my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you can effectively sign off from the graduate program. And that's what I did. I signed off into product management and just, I guess, just became a product manager.
So this was a year in, or a year and a half in, like.
This was kind of like 9 months in.
Oh wow, that's
to
a
this.
pretty. Because this is a question I get a lot too. Like, how can someone get into product management? I think your story is even more interesting now, because we start in politics and international relations to then, you know, marketing, data, PM, which is quite impressive, because it's not an easy role to get into nowadays. Like if you want to apply for a PM role, a lot of experience is required. So it sounds like you internally, maybe, do you think it was easier for you to grow into that role within the kind of Tesco infrastructure, or yeah, if you had to apply for a PM role in another company, do you think it would have been more difficult for you?
I don't think I knew what a product manager was at
I
the
love
time.
this. Okay.
At the time.
Yeah.
But
You turned into one, basically.
when it's within you.
Okay. After 9 months.
After 9 months, when it's brewing in you, you just know that's what you are. But no, I think at that time,
Yeah.
product management wasn't quite as famous as it is now.
True.
Because I'd never really heard, like, I'd obviously heard of product management, but it wasn't like every single company needed a product manager they do now, And I think, to answer your question, how would I go about that now? If I was working in a job that wasn't a product manager, I would produce like product management, principles, and I would leverage product management methodologies, because ultimately, to be a product manager, like everyone should be a bit of a product manager, because the core skills are kind of around, prioritization and like creating roadmaps and ensuring quick and valuable delivery of products. So, if you're an employee, everyone should be using those types of strategies to deliver value quickly. So I guess that would be my main, bit of advice, that if you're currently working, there's no reason why you shouldn't be adopting those strategies.
Yeah.
And if you're not currently working, there's so much good, online resources now which you can do to practice these skills and methodologies. But apart from that, probably network. I'd probably just try and understand and learn from other product managers, and work with more senior product managers who are going to need to hire junior/associate product managers.
Is that what you did?
That's not what I did.
But that's the advice you're giving, which means it's beneficial.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
Again, because I think product management wasn't quite as big back when I started to do it. I mean, it was big, but it wasn't as big as now.
Yeah.
I signed off into an analytics team, not into a product team. So that's probably something to note as well, that within some companies, there's going to be like a very clearly defined, like product management career framework, which might start at entry level, going all the way up to like VP or, CPO. But a lot of companies will just have a very lean organizational structure. And maybe there's a product manager, but the company is a startup or in growth phase, and they don't have that type of, like linear progression.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in those scenarios, it's a little bit more of like ad hoc in terms of, who's got a role available, what's like the roadmap, do they need people to help deliver stuff, do they need someone to help create that roadmap? But in the, I guess, bigger, more mature companies, I presume, because now I've not really been in the job market for a while, but I presume that there's lots of opportunities out there for people to be associate or junior product managers, so they're just starting.
Yeah. It's interesting what you said about, it didn't used to be as big as it is today. My exposure to PMs is mostly in tech startups. So I know that for that, it's really difficult and highly competitive to get into that role. So back to you and Tesco, what were you focusing on? Like, what kind of products were you working with?
It was all analytics capability.
Okay.
So a really great example of a product that we produced, and this was something that I actually inherited from a great PM who's a product coach now, called Diana Matai. And it was called store reporting. So this was every single store manager within Tesco, which there was obviously, a crazy amount of stores like within the UK. This was automating their store's performance on a singular dashboard, which would refresh, dynamically throughout the day.
Oh, wow.
So it sounds kind of simple, but actually when you think about the scale of it and you think about the amount of data from source which needs to be sort of passed out to these different store managers frequently, it's actually quite a big project. And also there's a lot of operational systems that need to be involved and leveraged also. So that's kind of one example of what we do. So tying together data, automating processes to basically enable people to have more time to use that thing to make better decisions.
Okay, so you did that for what, a year and a half almost?
It was about a year and a half, yeah.
And then why did you leave? What happened?
Why did I leave? I think the long and short answer was just I was ready to move on, you know. It was the only company I'd ever worked for.
Yeah, true.
So I had such a large experience there of being... I think the other thing is that when you're a graduate somewhere and you sign off into a permanent role, you know, the perspective of you is still that you're a graduate, despite your impact. And to be
It's your
fair,
reputation.
it's the reputation, yeah.
Yeah.
But the amazing thing is that, you know, people do look out for you because they've helped train you into like the thing that you are. Like I remember they put me through like a Silicon Valley product training, which was super great. But I think, yeah, my race was just run, and generally there's like a linear curve when you start working and even when you get promoted into a new role or something, whereby you're the one asking loads of questions. And then when suddenly people are asking you loads of questions and you're not really asking anyone else any more questions, then you know it's either time to, you know, try and progress in terms of your internal role, or switch to another internal team, or look externally in something if obviously you want to progress, you know.
I really like what you just said. Like, I stopped there about when people start asking lots of questions and you're not the one asking as many questions anymore, it's time to move on. Like I think that's a really good way to assess whether you're still gaining value from where you are, because obviously it's important to know when you're making an impact. But I think it's really important, especially early in your career, to feel like you're always growing or always getting something back. And it sounds like for you,
Yeah.
You've reached that point where, okay, yeah, time to look for something where I will start, like, unlock my next stage of growth.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So,
but it also depends on who you are, right? Because
of course, yeah.
some people have lots of other things going on and, you know, they're happy in the thing they are, or you have an amazing manager who understands and appreciates this, and, you know, there's so much value placed on like incredible managers who give you more responsibility and autonomy and, you know, encouragement to produce new ideas. Because once people stop asking you questions, maybe you've got more free time to actually be creative in the role and actually start to progress things which are not necessarily within, let's say, like your immediate KPIs, but it's something which is more like a passion project. So yeah, lots of different avenues.
And we'll get into your passion project. But first, let's talk about what happened after Tesco. So you moved to, you stayed in the PM, like you knew you wanted to still be a product manager.
Yeah.
But for another company. So you started looking for opportunities.
I don't remember really looking for an opportunity. I didn't apply for too many roles, but I do remember getting quite a lot of LinkedIn messages, and one of them was from a company called Farfetch, which I actually didn't know too much about or anything about, but my mother knew a lot about them. And
kudos to her.
She told me to go for it and to go and get stuck into the industry.
She gave you really good advice.
She knew it was a investment to have me in the luxury fashion world.
Yeah, smart woman. Anyway, so what happened? Like, how was the application process? Because obviously from Tesco to Farfetch, which is, at scale, smaller company in that sense, right? So was it easier, harder? Like, how did you find the shift?
It was within the application. I mean, the application process was, I guess, fairly smooth because
no assessment center.
Because they had no assessment center, but at the same time, it was my first product sense interview. Because before, when you go on the graduate program, it's very generic about, you know, testing your competency and your behaviors and your collaboration, as opposed to testing, you know, your technical skill as a product manager. So it's very different. And I remember I had 4 interviews, one with a hiring manager, one with the head of data science, one with data scientists and analysts, and then one with the head of like reporting and BI.
It's impressive that you remember this so clearly. It was like
I remember the first question they asked me was like, "Do you shop on Farfetch?" And I thought that was like a trick question.
What did you say?
I was like, to be honest with you, no. Like,
Oh my God. I love
And
this. Maybe they love the honesty.
they could tell from what I
Did
was
you say
wearing.
my mom does?
But yeah, but we've got a one of the high loyalty tier segment. No, not at all. But
Okay.
yeah, I think most people who work there don't really shop there.
Yes. Okay. But your mom shops there.
I think she did after I started working there.
Okay, I promise I'll stop asking questions about your mom. Sorry, I got so excited. All right, so you went through that interview process, like those 4 interviews. Obviously, it sounds like they were pretty technical, from the roles that
Yeah.
you told me about. But you were able to navigate those interviews, right? Because you clearly spent a year and a half working in that role. So, did you find it challenging or expected?
At that level, which was mid product manager level, you
Yeah.
come into a company, I don't think they're expecting you to be the finished article at all. It's a lot around like, do you know your stuff as a product manager?
Yeah.
And do you have the right attitude and the right culture to fit into that company? Which is why I do think doing some kind of formal training around like I just did the Silicon Valley piece, but having some kind of formal training is really good because when you get to those moments, you won't have the previous examples of times where you've used like all of your arsenal of product management expertise or
Yeah,
knowledge,
of course.
but you do at least know kind of like the methodologies. So when they do ask you different scenario-based questions, you have a pretty good idea of kind of how to say things.
So I have a question for you, and this is something I'm always curious about. How relevant / important is the industry you're in when it comes to being a PM or, to be fair, any other role, like even in marketing? Like I always wonder how relevant is the industry for you as an individual, but also as an employee, because you went from, food services to
Yeah.
luxury fashion. So was that important for you in your choices, or did you just want to focus on the role and the industry didn't really matter to you?
It was definitely for me just more about the role and the people
Okay.
as opposed to the industry, but caveated by the fact that at the time I also had another offer from a betting company,
Okay.
but decided to not take that forward because I didn't kind of like the, I guess, connotations around, like gambling promotion.
Okay.
So that was more of like a personal choice.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'd say in terms of, is it important to like have that experience before when you go into a different industry? Honestly, I don't know. I think my real generalization on it would be the more junior you are, the less important it is, because obviously, the expectations on your expertise is really different.
Yeah.
But now, for example, when you see some roles in fintech, which are hiring a lot, they're often like, fintech experience required. Plus, the market now for employers is so saturated. There's so many people out there looking for jobs that if you are an employer, you can be quite granular in terms of your requirements. And if you're an employer, naturally, you would rather the person who's done that industry previously, because the upskill time is obviously a lot less and the conversational knowledge of that industry is already there.
Yeah.
I think there's pros and cons basically to being kind of an expert in one industry and not an expert in one industry.
So yeah, this is I'm asking you the question also because in my personal experience, like I'm I'm within the tech industry, but in very different markets, and so as a marketer, I don't find it that challenging. Actually, I love that I'm learning about new markets, but
Yeah.
sometimes I wonder, would something that maybe speaks to me a bit more, like I don't know, product built for marketers, maybe my expertise would be even more valuable in an industry that speaks to me rather than something I'm unfamiliar with.
Yeah.
But anyway, it sounds like you succeeded as a
No, but
PM
that
in
makes
the
sense,
luxury
right?
fashion.
Because if you think about it, whether you're in product management or marketing,
Yeah.
the strategies that you use for success are the same. You know, like for a product, you use as our methodologies. For marketing, you'd use different like marketing effectiveness techniques to encourage awareness and engagement. The things which change are the variables, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're on B2B, the metrics you care about for marketing are more maybe like MQLs or SQLs. Whereas if you're on D2C, you know, it's more be just like traffic to the site. And same thing with product management. You know, if you're working within a marketplace like Farfetch, you know, GTV, GMV are kind of like your core metrics that you care about. Whereas if you're a product manager for B2B, you're probably focusing a bit more on like product-led growth strategies, you know, so.
You should have said PLG so then the listeners would be even more confused by all these abbreviations. And it's just like, I mean, I get it because I'm in the same kind of industry, you know, but I'm pretty sure maybe not a lot of people know what we're referring to. But, you know, it's all product marketing / management jargon, to be honest.
Yeah.
But you are saying basically your KPIs don't really, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what you're working towards, whatever industry you work in, right? That's the point you're making.
Yeah, the overall point is kind of the strategies to get to the outcome
Right.
are agnostic of the industry,
Exactly.
but the metrics will change, you know, depending on the industry that you're working in.
Yeah. Unless you have to write content about it, though. This is just, you know, side note. Okay, interesting. So you then spent 4 years, right, at Farfetch. How did that go? Like what happened during that time also? Did anything, you know, side hustles, anything like that?
See where you're going. It was good, Farfetch. I mean, I originally started my role in product management focusing purely on SEO.
Okay.
So basically how
Traffic.
Yeah, traffic, organic traffic, not spending money traffic, and quite interesting stuff around, you know, working with algorithms to improve our SEO proposition. And then I guess as I progressed, they just kept adding more stuff to the thing. So that was me as a mid. And then when I became a senior, it was more around like marketing effectiveness and incrementality. And then when I became a principal product manager, it was more holistic around customer data foundations. And
so I'm sorry, I have to ask you now. Like, it sounds like you grow into your roles very quickly. So you had 3 promotions in 4 years at Farfetch, right?
I think it was 2, from mid to senior, senior to principal.
Okay, sorry, 2.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about how that works? Because I also get questions around when is the right time to ask for a promotion, or when do you know that you deserve a promotion?
Yeah.
So, or maybe it was just offered to you, I don't know, but I'd love for you to maybe expand a bit more on that.
To be honest, my biggest piece of advice is to be really transparent with your manager about your desires.
Is that what you did?
Yeah, like consistently.
Tell us more.
So,
teach us.
You know, it's kind of like I guess a bit of a lesson of life. You know, you don't really ask unless you don't get unless you ask. And that was something as soon as I started, I remember saying to my manager, she was called Simmel. I was like, I want to be a senior. You know,
like the first day?
You know, near to maybe the first month, maybe not the actual first day.
Okay.
But I think just being transparent with your intentions, you know, I think you need to show that you're ambitious, and the person who can get you to that next level is obviously yourself, but also your manager and their guidance.
Yeah.
So creating that environment whereby you're being really transparent and you're creating that kind of plan together, you know, assessing kind of what's the role framework for a senior? What am I currently doing? What am I not doing? If I have a gap here, you can ask your manager, like, can I do a product that will help me, you know, hit this thing off or tick this box? So being really transparent is definitely my key piece of advice there.
So how do you start the conversation? Like, you just say, I hit all my objectives this quarter. I think I'm, you know, in a good spot for promotion. Is that what you do? Or
you definitely need to take accountability of your career.
Okay.
I think that would be, you know, a large bit of advice to someone who is just getting started. As in, if you don't have a weekly meeting with your manager, get one in. You know, there's no need to not. If there's also like the director of product in the area who's 2 job families or job roles away from you, put in a monthly meeting and get to know them. You know, understand what like the domain or department strategy is. Be a part of that. You know.
Yeah, I like that you're sharing very practical advice, because sometimes it's people don't really know where to start, and it's like, how do I even have the conversation? Or
Yeah.
And actually, what makes me sad is most of the conversations I have, even if it's just with friends, like, I don't feel like I deserve to ask for it. And it's like, you've been there for 2 years, of course you should,
Yeah, and it's not a time-based thing either. You know, it's just like, if you're ready.
Month 1. I deserve this.
No, but some people do come in at a role which is too low for them.
Yeah.
And the best managers, understand and identify that really quickly. And they make a point of saying, you're too senior for this role. Let's work out how we can get you to that next level.
Yeah.
Because I think, what people kind of forget as well is that just because you're working within a company, you still can network. You can still meet people and understand different teams and challenges and opportunities.
And where you fit, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Shifts, right?
Exactly. And likewise, you've also got your own personal brand. If you think of yourself as like a mini company, you've got your own personal brand, and you need to kind of build up your equity of being an individual within that company. And, the reason why, not sure it's happened to me, but the reason why people want to promote you and retain you is to obviously, 1, reward, great performance, but 2 is because you're an asset to the team, not just kind of from the work perspective, but also from, like the cultural perspective as well.
Yeah.
Like if you're embedded into everything and you're helping support teams and the energy and the environment, that's also someone that people want around for longer.
It's not just about the performance, it's about your soft skills too. No, but yeah, this is I think once I read something about, it's called social equity. How much you invest in, as you said, networking or the connections that you have around you, and how that can support you grow. And yeah, based on that, I want to ask you now, what was the side hustle experience like for you? So maybe you can take us through when you started Day One Data.
So Day One Data is a very recent thing, but actually Jake Barnett Limited, I guess, started kind of a year before that.
Okay.
Very organic, but a company a few years ago, called Misfits Health, reached out for some advice on...
Isn't that the protein bar?
The vegan protein. Yeah.
I love that brand.
They're so tasty. No. I used to. They used to fill me to the brim.
I'm actually jealous of this part. I did not know this was not on LinkedIn. You're so lucky. You should have brought some.
No, but this was a long time ago.
Okay.
It's a long time ago. But I was basically doing some product data strategy type consulting for them.
But how did this happen?
The founder at the time reached out via LinkedIn.
Because of your Tesco experience, right?
Because I guess so.
Yeah, I mean,
I guess so. Okay. Reached out via LinkedIn and was just like, would you be down for sort of, doing a little bit of consulting? We want to do more with our data. Can you help us sort of, land and expand with it? And worked with them for like 4 to 6 months, created a nice data strategy.
Okay.
And this was like a long time ago. And that kind of, I guess, wet the whistle for me working with these kind of like external clients. And by the way, I signed it off with Farfetch. I think there was 2 main rules, which was like, don't let it interfere with your Farfetch work and don't share company secrets. And if you do that, you can kind of go out there and do your thing.
Okay, wow. So yeah, what happened then? Like you had an impact on their Like your consulting services were valued, and then you decided to scale that, or
Pretty much.
so you had left Farfetch, right?
Pretty
Like,
much.
you were
I was still
done.
working at Farfetch.
You were working there,
Yeah. So this
but
was
they
when
knew
I
you
was
were
working.
doing this.
Yeah, correct. And then effectively another project came in some months after that. It wasn't linear. Like I just finished that, and then suddenly loads of people were asking for me.
Okay.
But another company called Hilo Athletics, which is a shoe company, they got in contact because the founder, he was also the founder of this new company, Hilo, and they had a different set of problems which they needed, more to do with like data infrastructure, not so much on the strategic side, but more like implementation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when Jake Barnett Limited became Atom Group. With
Oh my God, there's so many iterations.
yeah,
Okay.
so this was a group of like 3 of us across. We had myself more on like sort of product management. We had data like science / analytics, doing kind of, you know, more insights based stuff. And we had analytics engineering, which is more to do with like data pipelines, data visualization, data warehousing. And yeah, the 3 of us did a really cool job in out like kind of building out their data foundations, their data infrastructure, a really comprehensive reporting suite. And that was pretty much the pinnacle of me being like, I am going to stop working at Farfetch one day and make this a company.
When did you know that was it?
Honestly, the feeling that you get when you are onboarding a client, which is your own personal thing, where you're sort of, the outcome based is fully based around your like expertise and your experience and your opinion and your ability to implement, is so much better than anything that I had ever felt previously.
Right.
And so I knew from that moment that, you know, now that I've got a taste for this, that this is my thing.
So how did it become officially your thing? Like, tell us after,
Yeah.
post Farfetch. So you left the company because you knew this was it, or
So
what happened?
when I was still at Farfetch, what became like increasingly apparent was that Farfetch obviously had a fairly big marketing budget, and the role that I had was basically to spend that in the most sort of like effective and efficient way possible through various different products within
Right.
my domain. And so much is changing in marketing to do with like data privacy stuff, like new social media channels, traditional channels around like out of home marketing, which are getting more and more impactful. So for me, that was just where my intrigue lied. So I kind of, you know, cross reference my previous experience of wanting to be in marketing and kind of found a way to do it through marketing data, and learned quite a lot of, I guess, the marketing like topics and different bits of information. So then when we were working with Hilo, the bits of Hilo which really intrigued me were around, you know, marketing effectiveness and budget optimization. So how we can make sure that marketers can spend less money but get more return. And that's kind of where day one was really born, in becoming a pure sort of like data foundations and then marketing analytics consultancy.
Super interesting. Like, you found your niche, and it's a very clear problem. It's not just data for anyone, anytime. It's marketing
Yeah.
teams, budget optimization. Like,
Yeah. I
super
mean,
clear.
mentally, you know, if you want to use data, you need to get it into a place that people can use,
Yeah.
right? Which is why the data foundations are non-negotiable. And I'm always talking about data foundations. And then it's kind of like in my head, what's the most impactful thing you can do with data?
Yeah.
And it's a bit of a whirlwind, you know. It's very different to my time at Farfetch. Like, the end of Farfetch basically happened. The company got acquired, and they were doing a number of redundancies, some voluntary, some involuntary. I had the opportunity to basically leave and did it. And
Because you had this project mostly, or like, was it an extra motivation for you to take the risk and fully, commit to it in a way?
But by the end of it, they got rid of like I think a fair amount of people in London. But at that time, you know, when there was a lot of, I guess, like, there was a big grey area of like what people should be doing. You know, most people were applying for new roles
Yeah.
at this point, going through those different emotions. But I was like, there's no way I'm going to work for someone else ever again in my life.
No, and you had that kind of realization while you were at Farfetch. You said it. You would leave and do your own thing. Like you were already in that mindset.
Yeah, exactly. So it was kind of, I guess, another coincidence of life, you know, presenting itself to me where I could sort of take this opportunity and go with it. Plus, de-risk the decision a little bit because of, you know, when you get made redundant, you have a lot of time to think about stuff, and you also get paid, you know, redundancy package. Every company has a slightly different set of rules for that, but in this scenario, it gave me enough money to be able to kick something off, basically, and to be able to invest some money into that.
Are you still on your redundancy package, or it ended a long time ago?
No, still there.
Still, okay.
Well, it gets very, you know, this is the other thing they don't tell you, is that when you become a founder, suddenly, you know, you're not on PAYE anymore. Like, you know, HMRC aren't doing your taxes for you, or the company's not doing your taxes for you.
Oh my God, this gives me anxiety.
Yeah.
Like,
so you know, you have to start thinking about dividends and bonuses and
all the serious stuff.
and all of this stuff.
You're alone doing this, or you have a team?
So we have two partners.
Okay.
I have two partners. One used to be the head of data at Farfetch, and one used to be head of analytics engineering at Farfetch.
Nice. They followed you.
Well, they're so one is working on a contract role and one is working in a full-time role, but the plan is at the end of this year to be a full-time founding
really cool.
team.
Wow.
And we have 10 contractors working on different projects for us at this point in time, so no permanent hires, but we'll weigh that up if we need to do that in the future.
I read a book about entrepreneurship and like starting your own company, and I think there was a stat which I don't remember, but it said most founders who start a company are usually people who work together in a corporate and saw so many problems.
Yeah.
They decided to start their own thing to overcome those problems. So it sounds like this is where it's going, or what's happening, you know, that you have people from your previous company joining you on your journey and supporting you, right? Because it means they believe in what you're doing. So that's pretty cool.
No, definitely. I mean, I think starting something by yourself, like really isolated alone, is very hard. And I'm such a sort of like golden retriever in my approach to everything that, you know, I do need like a core group around me. And
fair enough.
And, you know, obviously when you work with people previously, it's not just those problems that you've sort of, you know, faced together, but you also trust them because you've worked with them previously. So that's a big part of it. And I hear so many stories about people who I have met, you know, throughout my life of their co-founders or founders just weren't the right fit. So it's something which is really important to basically, you know, take a lot of time, think it through.
Yeah.
When you're, you know, starting out, it's not that impactful and not that important. But if in the scenario you become huge and you're running some massive conglomerate, suddenly these issues start to become
bigger.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Before I ask you about the personality test, because that's kind of the final question.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear from you as, you know, a founder who's going through early days of your founding journey still, right? So do you want to...
Really early.
Yeah, really early. Do you want to share one... This is such a classic question, but like one challenge that you're facing constantly since you started, and also one tip that you would give to people who are considering becoming founders themselves?
That's a good one. There's so many challenges.
The one, except for the taxes, like...
Yeah, that's a very like something practical challenge.
Something that really makes you not worry, but, you know, that you're not so happy about when you wake up in the morning.
Probably the biggest shift for me and the biggest challenge is that I've always worked in these big, juicy companies, you know, Tesco and Farfetch. and it's always been very internally facing, my role.
Yeah.
So, the definition of success is always to do with like releasing something, especially when you're working in data product. Generally your customers are internal employees. But now the success of the business is fully around, clients and onboarding new clients and retaining existing clients.
Mm-hmm.
And when you've just started off, you don't have the hires of like a project manager and an account manager and a business development representative.
Yeah.
You don't have all of these job families, which means exactly. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge for me, whereby if we're pitching for new work and I'm pitching for new work, you're dedicating so much effort into creating these different pitches and, really understanding these different requirements. But at the same time, you're not outreaching. So your whole lead generation is going nowhere and it's stagnant. So definitely I'd say that's probably my biggest pet peeve right now, is balancing the two of winning new work, making sure existing people are really happy, and also, sort of like having that demand generation pipeline or funnel.
Yeah, you're doing everything basically.
But obviously retaining the existing clients and, making sure they're happy and delivering above and beyond is like paramount and the most important thing.
And also obviously, having the capacity for it, maybe it's not always the case, and it's okay to know when to say no or when not to spend time outreaching, when you have to prioritize retention.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's okay. That's your challenge. And what about the tip? Like, if I tell you tomorrow I want to start my business, what would you tell me? What's the first thing I should know?
I was given this piece of advice before. I think it's a really good piece of advice. And it's, you can't be everything to everyone. So when you have a proposition, your value proposition for your business, eventually you want to be as broad as possible to get as many customers as possible. But when you start out, it's better to have a really specific, ideal customer profile in mind, with a very specific problem or opportunity that you're looking to impact.
Mm-hmm.
So that'd be my biggest piece of advice.
Okay. Which in your case, like now you're quite niche, as in it's, data products, but like it's marketing teams that you're targeting, right? So it's still, I'm sure within marketing, you will still find another niche that you need to kind of bring value to. But okay, thank you for sharing that. And finally, the personality test. So I like to ask this question to all my guests.
Yeah.
And it's the 16personalities.com test, which so far no one has challenged why this test. Like everyone just does it. So I guess I'm going to keep asking.
We're thinking it, but we just don't vocalize it.
Like I swear to you, everyone just did it and sent me their results right away. Like I think, I don't know, are they scared or do they just don't want to ask why I ask about this? But so yeah, thank you for doing it. Did it take you like less than 10 minutes or?
I think it took me longer than I wanted it to take.
Was it harder than the assessment center?
It depends how long you want to, you want to really think about those questions.
Yeah.
It's probably meant to be done, quite rapid fire.
Yes. Yeah.
But some of them are like, you really get ponderous into who you are as a human.
Yeah. And so Jake's result is the protagonist, ENFJ. So extroverted, feeling, and judging. Wait, I skipped one. The N is intuitive, feeling and judging. So essentially, I mean, now I feel like I learned this by heart because most of my guests are actually protagonists. And the way they describe you in the test is someone who cares about helping others and kind of, you have a mission and you're just going to go for it. You're the classic leader. They describe you as a born leader. And so I'd love to learn from you, because from everything you shared so far, it sounds like you always went for what you felt like you wanted. Even if you weren't 100% sure, you're like, I'm going to go like follow this path. You ended up as a PM and then, pursued that through Farfetch and so on. And then now your own company. But it also sounds like you're a team player. Like enjoy working with others. No, maybe I'm misreading you here, but from everything you said, that's what I took.
It's like you're reading into me, my soul.
Is it? Okay, so I mean, that's what I remember from the test. But what did you think? I'm also gonna open it here.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, to be honest with you. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think being a product manager, you have to work really well with others in terms of your collaborative approach. And you also are not afraid of making decisions, and you're not afraid of, getting things wrong and trying things again. But at the end of the day, you do need to be positive about your actions, and you do need to, be fairly confident in terms of what you're doing. And if that does require a little bit of persuasion, sometimes that's important.
It's funny here because they say these personalities can be found among many notable politicians. I'm like, well, he didn't want to become a politician. But okay, so you're fairly happy with happy as in the results resonate with you and your approach to your work, I guess.
I never really think about it. But yeah, everything you're saying, I'm like, yeah, I think I am quite protagonistic in my approach.
I mean, to be fair, you can't say no to this. It's a pretty cool description.
Definitely.
These personalities are genuine, caring people who talk the talk and walk the walk. I mean, okay. Good for you, Jake. This is pretty cool. But
I definitely think, empathy is such a big part of, life and in general, just being kind to people and understanding other people.
You're saying it's an important part? Or?
Yeah, I'm happy that it said that about me.
Okay, yeah. I agree. And just the other day, I was having this conversation with my friend about because you were talking about also managers supporting you in your growth. I think usually, from my experience, great managers are the ones who do have empathy because they can sense when someone is either frustrated or they can really support you in your growth and almost make you share what you want to achieve.
Yeah.
Because it's also easy to fall under a manager who just wants you to execute all the time and not really value you as an individual. I don't know why I'm saying this. I guess, yes, empathy is important. But yeah, we're done with the interview. Thank you so much, Jake.
Cool. Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate you also coming all the way here and sharing your story with me.
No problem. I'll see you on episode 100 for a special repeat guest edition.